Hi everyone! Another year has passed. We have Christmas 2019 and I'm very sorry, but I have done very few videos this year, 2019. I hope to get better next year and do some more videos for you. I have some books that I really want to talk about, some comics also. And I hope to be able to take some more time off for doing videos next year, because I will not be working 7 days a week as I have this year. From January I will work 5 days a week, and later possibly 6 days a week, but not 7 days a week, which I have done this year. So I've hardly had time to do any fitness. I had very little time for seeing friends, also for writing my new book, of course, which annoyed me a lot. I had some time this spring for doing research. I read 8 books by Nietzsche, my favorite philosopher, which was long overdue. I have been wanting to read them for a long time, and I started seriously to write again this June. I wrote a few things in June and July, and then I was in New York City during August and early September for the first time in my life, my first visit to the US. I stayed there for 4 weeks, and it was a great experience. I also went to Providence, Rhode Island, because of the H.P. Lovecraft Festival for a few days. My first visit there, of course, also. And it was a great experience, especially to have a look at the city and the houses where H.P. Lovecraft used to live. I read a few of his manuscripts in facsimile editions in his own handwriting, which was great. And I went to the grave, the cemetery, and it was all a really interesting experience. The festival itself, with the lectures, were a little bit disappointing. A few of them were good, but several of them didn't really have the depth that I had been expecting. But what can you do? That's life. I'm now waiting for Alan Moore's 3-part comic series, Providence, which is based, it said, partly on H.P. Lovecraft's stories, partly on his life. And these were originally, I believe, 12 issues, which they later collected in 3 books. And I'm really looking forward to reading this, because I love H.P. Lovecraft, I love his stories, and I love especially the age. And apparently Alan Moore did a lot of research for writing these books. He looked at photos from the age, for example, and did other kinds of research. And this is a very interesting period in European and American history. The story, I believe, takes place in 1919, and it was a time where a lot of things happened. There were a lot of political changes, a lot of cultural changes. The artists and the writers and so on of the time stood still with one foot in Romanticism and with one foot in modernity. They were experimenting a lot, but still they had influences, were influenced by the Romantic period, which is a period which I really love, and I think you can say from which fantasy fiction, which is what I myself is writing, also originated from the Romantic literature. So, what are we to do today? I want to talk about a few things that you can do during this Christmas period, books and a movie with Christmas topics, and then I'll take you on a new tour through my library. Last year, the last Christmas video, I talked about my books, and this time I will talk a little bit about my painted statues, because I bought a fair amount of statues this year. I have already showed you my bronzed statues, but now I will talk about my painted statues. And it's a little hobby of mine. I'm not a serious collector by any means. I just buy some statues which I really like, either because I love the statues themselves, or in a few cases I love the book or comic or TV show that the statue is based on. But in most of these cases I also love the statues themselves. So that's what we're going to do, and starting with movie tip, which is not that well known. It's Thomas Kincaid's Christmas Cottage from 2008. It's an American movie. I think it wasn't even shown in theaters in the US, unfortunately, because it's a lovely little movie about the painter Thomas Kincaid, who was very young at that time. He was a teenager, but already an aspiring painter. And his friendship with an old and sick painter played by Peter O'Toole, the magnificent Peter O'Toole, who sadly passed away a few years ago. It was one of his last movies. And this is a biopic. Thomas Kincaid is a well-known painter today. You can find his works on the internet, and I love them. And it tells the story of his family and life in, I believe, 1977. His friendship with his older artist, his troubled relationship with his father, who has been absent for a few years, and his mother has financial problems, I believe, and it all takes place during the Christmas period, and it's a really heart-warming story that you can watch during the Christmas period, also with your kids if you have children. So, that's the first recommendation. Then, if you want to read something during this Christmas period which is really good and which has something to do with Christmas, the first thing I would recommend would be the classic by C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, which is volume 2 in his Narnia book series. This is my Swedish translation, which I read as a child myself, Häxan och Lejonet, which means the witch and the lion. And I reread these books as an adult like 2 years ago, and I actually talked about all of these books here on my channel, and they are really a fun read, really witty, with also some psychological depth and social satire, and you can notice when you read these books also that C.S. Lewis had lots of fun when writing them. This is a complete edition of all the Narnia books in one fat volume in the original English. And the next one I would recommend is another kid's book, also volume 2 in a series of 5 books by Susan Cooper. This one is called The Dark is Rising. This is again my Swedish translation, which I read as a kid, En ring av järn, which means a ring of iron. The original is called, as I said, The Dark is Rising, which is also the title of the whole series. This is a collected edition in English, and it's a great story. I loved all these books. I reread them as an adult a few years ago, and I loved them, except possibly for the last volume 5, which was weaker, but the first 4 are really good. You can read them as an adult. Also, they are very exciting, and by far I would say the best volume is the second one, which is called The Dark is Rising, which takes place during Christmas, and it's a little bit of a dark fantasy or even horror fantasy, so I wouldn't recommend it to younger kids. It could be a little bit scary. For example, some people are trapped in a mansion in a snowstorm, they cannot get out. It's a lot about magic, and I believe also J.K. Rowling stole a few things from this book series for a Harry Potter series, because the main character, Will Staunton, is exactly the same age as Harry Potter. He's also being trained as a wizard. I haven't read the Harry Potter books, but I think she stole a few things from Susan Cooper, and also of course from the Books of Magic, the comic, classical comic by Neil Gaiman, which is also a very good comic, which is about the education of a young boy to become a wizard, and he's called Timothy Hunter, and he looks exactly like Harry Potter. So, what you can also read is, of course, the classic by Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol. The Christmas books collects 3 Christmas stories by Charles Dickens, with a foreword from 1843, so it's an older classic. I bought this the 3rd of March in 1999, and I read it now, so I had it on my bookshelf for a long time. I liked A Christmas Carol. It has the usual Dickens flaws, I would say, very angelic and idealized female characters, and a lot of moralizing, which can be tiresome for a modern reader. I read, as an undergraduate, David Copperfield by Dickens, because of the fact that Ludwig Wittgenstein loved the book, and I was very much into Wittgenstein. At that time I studied philosophy, so I read Haji Murat by Tolstoy. I read a lot by Dostoevsky, because Wittgenstein loved Dostoevsky, and I also read David Copperfield, and I liked it. And then I read A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, which I hated, because it was so sentimental. The female characters were so unconvincing, and there was so much moralizing. So I stopped reading Dickens, and this was actually the first time I read Dickens again in, I guess, more than 20 years. I liked this book. It was funny, it was witty, there was some moralizing, of course, but it's a heartwarming story that you can read during the Christmas period. There are reasons for the fact that it's become a classic, I would say. The other two stories here, the second one is called The Chimes, which I found fairly boring, about a man experiencing magic. He's a caretaker of sorts in a church, and during the Christmas period he experiences magic, and he meets spirits in this church, but it's fairly at the end of the story, and most of the story is taking up his attempts to protect his daughter from being sexually harassed by some rich young men, and carrying a letter to a certain person and the answer to another person, and it's a fairly boring story, so I'm not surprised at all that it's not as well known as A Christmas Carol. And the last one, The Cricket on the Hearth, I haven't read yet, so I don't know if it's good. What you can also read is a comic version of A Christmas Carol. It's a Batman story, which is very, very loosely based on A Christmas Carol by Dickens, and it was drawn by the absolutely fabulous comic artist Lee Bermejo. He's my favorite comic artist of all time, and especially my favorite Batman artist of all time. Unfortunately, he also wrote the story here and wrote the text, and Bermejo is a fantastic artist, but he's not a good writer, and something that he shares with another fantastic Batman artist, Neil Adams, who wrote a lot of who not wrote a lot of Batman in the 70s, who is also not a writer. The art is absolutely fantastic. It's the best comic art I've ever seen in a comic, although I'm not really that experienced yet in reading comics. I came back to comics just a few years ago, and I seriously started to read comics, I believe, only this year. I bought my first omnibuses of comics only in the few last weeks, actually. So, but I'm looking forward to read many more comics, and more seriously, because it's a very interesting medium where you have the possibility to tell a story also visually. It's comics, I think, are to be situated between novels and films, and they have I think the advantages of both mediums in a way. It's a very interesting medium, and I look forward to read more comics for adults, which are not that action-centered, which are more character-centered and character-driven, and this is certainly something that Bermejo is into. So this is a very beautiful comic. If you are patient, because the story is a little bit shallow, then this might be interesting as a complement to A Christmas Carol by Dickens. I would much more recommend other Bermejo Batman comics, like, for example, this one written by Brian Azzarello, called simply Joker, which is very good. It has the fabulous Bermejo art, but it has a much better writer. This is a really, really great story. I think one of the best Batman comics ever. It's absolutely fantastic. Another joint work by Azzarello and Bermejo is Luthor, or it used to be called Lex Luthor, Man of Steel. And this is a character which I have become increasingly interested in Superman as well, because of the fantastic Smallville TV series, which I watched in all 10 seasons. This spring I am currently rewatching season 5. I've been rewatching the first 5 seasons. I will watch season 6 also, and then I will stop, I believe, because from season 7 onwards it's not that good. It's a very character-driven TV series, very deep, a lot of relationship stuff, father-son relationship stuff, very psychological, also philosophical. And I wasn't disappointed by this comic because it's also character-driven. It's told from Lex Luthor's perspective, so he is, so to speak, the good guy here, and Superman is the adversary. It's a very fresh take on these characters, very interesting, with fabulous artwork. I heartily recommend this comic Luthor. It's very, very beautiful. You have Superman here also. So, if you are even more interested in Bermejo and Azzarello, you can have a look at Batman Damned in 3 volumes, which has received some really negative criticism on the internet, but I liked it. And I believe the reason why I liked it is perhaps that I can approach these comics with fairly fresh eyes, since I haven't read very many comics. And if you have read a lot of Batman, you might be disappointed, because this is so different. It's very slow paced, very little text, big panels, as you can see, not very much happens. It's very meditative, very brooding, very dark, and very slow. Fantastic artwork. I liked it a lot because I like slow character-based stories. Batman is here guided through the dark and also magical sides of Gotham by John Constantine, and it might be a reason why a lot of people disliked it, or some people disliked it, because it's so magical and different from what we're used to in the Batman comic, that it might be off-putting for some Batman hardliners who want their crime-fighting detective, the rational hero with physical prowess, who of course has a trauma because of his parents' death, but who is not completely absorbed by that and by his guilt and his fears and desires, like in this one. I think you can compare this story more to something like Orson Welles' classic film version of Kafka's The Trial, because you're not really sure, is this a nightmare? Is it a story about the outbreak of insanity, or is it more of a psychoanalytical story of a person's deepest fears and desires without being a story about madness? You know, we're not really sure, we're not told, it's left to the reader, and I can understand if it annoys people who want a more straightforward, classical Batman story, where everything is explained and all loose ends are being tied up, which is not the case in this one. So a quick look at the 3rd volume also. And this is simply very different. Fantastic artwork, absolutely fabulous. I love this one. The 2nd volume perhaps was a little bit weaker, but I especially loved volume 1 and 3, and not just because of the artwork. I like it when not everything is being explained, and the story can remain a little bit mysterious and open, and you can interpret it in different ways. So, these are my recommendations for Christmas 2019. Now let's have a look at my painted statues in this library, and I hope to do a new video again soon where I will talk about a few books that I find interesting and important. I wish you a great Christmas 2019, a great New Year and a great 2020, and I hope to talk to you soon again. Okay, let's begin. I will quickly go through my bronzed statues without talking about them, since I've talked about them already. So we'll just move through quickly. These are my swords, my Iaido katana, with which I used to practice for a couple of years when I was doing and teaching Iaido. Alright, my bronzed statues. Nordic gods and an angel, and some fairy creatures. I love fairies. And some love couples. A girl doing yoga. And some beautiful ladies. More beautiful ladies. And a Spanish dancing girl, dancing and playing couple. The Statue of Liberty. I went to the US for the first time in my life this August and September. I stayed in New York City for a month, which was a great experience. And here my painted statues start. Tinkerbell, whom I really love, with an art print. This is a great statue. And Alice in Wonderland. Oh, this is a really sensual and beautiful Alice. Fantastic, with an art print too. Alright. Then we have some small pieces, chess pieces. We have John Constantine. Some other figures which I'm not quite sure about. We have Power Girl with the big boobs. She's got natural big boobs, which I guess annoys some feminists, but as a man I really dig it, and I think it's something that women should be proud of. Women who have big boobs naturally should be proud of their beauty and not ashamed of it. We have General Zod and Superman. We have Lex Luthor and the Kryptonite. We have the Huntress, which is a character I think they could develop more, giving her more of a personality. We have Commissioner Gordon and Alfred, very interesting characters. We have Batman, we have the Joker. I loved the new Joker movie, it was really interesting. We have Ra's al Ghul, also an interesting character, perhaps also slightly underdeveloped. And I can never remember the name of this guy, but it's an interesting character, with the one with the puppet. And we have Scarecrow, also a really intriguing character whom I would like to know more about. We have Killer Croc. We have two Poison Ivy, beautiful little pieces. We have from the Lord of the Rings, Eowyn, and another Eowyn. This looks really like the European Middle Ages. And we have Bilbo from The Hobbit, and some Game of Thrones. I love Jaime's armor as Royal Guard. Splendid. Alright. Then we have two pieces from Smallwood, the only ones I could find. There should be a Lex Luthor too, but I guess it's sold out. These are really old, I believe from 2001. when the first season came. These pieces are of course not well done, they don't look very good, but since I love the TV series, especially the first 3 seasons, I simply had to have them. And you have these, and you have some photos also from the main characters. We got Batman in the tactical suit. This one is a little bit small. I would have liked to have it a bit bigger, with the actor's face, Ben Affleck's face, whom I don't really enjoy. I don't really love when they make statues out of movie actors. I like more if they base them on the comics, like this one, this beautiful piece from Japan, I believe, of Daredevil. Also a little bit small, but it's beautiful. I love it. And then we have from Sin City, a very good movie based on a very good comic. This is actually a love couple, an unhappy love couple. There's a big age difference between these two. Yes, this is of course Bruce Willis, as you can see, but still I like these pieces and I love the movie, so I simply had to have them. And I like collecting couples. This is great. Alright, we have 2 pieces from Harry Potter. I like the first 4 Harry Potter movies. I don't like the statues that much. These 2 I like, but I'm waiting for a few more creatures. So this is a really beautiful Catwoman statue. I love the purple one. It's very, very sensual, very, very beautiful. Perfect piece. And then I have my biggest statue so far. It's the Batman Noel, based on the comic book by Lee Bermejo. This is really beautiful, and it's really, really big. It's almost 80 centimeters. And really well done. You can see here all the details. It's fantastic. Alright, moving on to the real Lord of the Rings section. I have shown these before the Wizards, which I bought last year, 2018. We got Saruman, Radagast and Gandalf, and we have some new ones here, Faramir and Eomer, also beautiful, with lots of details and real cloth. Then we got from Asmus Toys, Bilbo, really pretty, and Frodo. I'm waiting for the other hobbits from Asmus Toys. They will arrive in the next few weeks. And then we got, this is new, the Nazgul. I'm waiting for the attacking Nazgul also. It will arrive in the next few days. And from a computer game, I believe, Witcher, which is also a comic book. I haven't read the comic book and I'm not into computer games, but I love this piece. It's really beautiful. And we've got H.P. Lovecraft. I love his stories. I went to Providence for the first time this August for the biannual H.P. Lovecraft Festival, which was nice. I was perhaps a little bit disappointed by a few of the lectures, but I loved the town. I would love to go back there, especially more because of the town than because of the festival, I must say. This is also one of the pieces I bought last year, 2018, Frodo and Eowyn, beautiful, and Aragorn, another couple, Eowyn and Aragorn, small but beautiful pieces, and another Nazgul, also great pose. we've got Griffith from the manga Berserk, I believe, which I haven't read. I'm not into manga. As I understand it, he's not a very nice character, but I love the armor. Really nice. And a female barbarian, scantily clad, beautiful, and some really small toys for kids actually, but I like them. Alright, and we got Peter Pan being kissed by a girl. He's quite shocked, which I bought in New York City. Beautiful. Alright, moving on with more The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn. Beautiful and really big statue. This is huge. And another Eowyn, smaller. I couldn't find a bigger one. We've got a big Legolas, huge piece. And fitting, I think, Tauriel, who is not in the book, of course, and who is not the lover of Legolas. In the films, of course, she falls in love with a dwarf, which is completely unrealistic. Tolkien would turn around in his grave, not because he would be against it, but because it's so unrealistic. That simply wouldn't happen in Tolkien's world, that an elf maiden fell in love with a dwarf. Simply wouldn't happen. And I think these two should have been together. They would have been a good match, I think, much better than the dwarf and the elf maiden. This is an attacking forest elf. Beautiful piece from Weta Workshop in New Zealand. Alright. Then we got some DC. We have Satana. Fairly small piece, but I like it. And we have a big Supergirl. I hate the character of Supergirl. I think it's simply just a bad rip-off of Superman, but I love this statue. I disliked her in Smallville too. She was in Smallville season 7, which was the first really bad season, I thought, but I love this one with a bird. She looks so serene. I love the pose. Here's another bird. This is great. And the cloud. Otherworldly. Fantastic. And fitting, Superman, her cousin, the real sun god, and Batman with a kryptonite ring. I guess inspired by the Hush comic, which was very good. Beautiful and very complex piece. And Lois Lane in a 1940s style. I like this one. I didn't like her in Smallville, played by Erica Durance. I was much more in favor of Lana Lang, played by Kristen Crook. I love that character. But it's a beautiful little piece. Alright, moving on. Star Wars. I always liked these royal guards, even as a child, although they don't really have a role in the original movies except for just standing there and looking great. And the Emperor on his throne, also beautiful. I love the guards especially. And I have another one smaller, which also looks good. The Emperor with his guards. This looks great too. We've got Luke from the very first Star Wars movie as a farm boy. This is real nostalgia. 1977. And from the third of the original movies, now he's turned black with a damaged hand. He's not 100% a man anymore, he's part machine like his dad. And I'm waiting for the Bespin outfit from the second movie, The Empire Strikes Back, also from Hot Toys. It will be a great supplement to these two. I have the Java characters, who are in the very first Star Wars movie. They don't have a big role to play, but I like them. They're really cute, these two guys. And the old master, Obi-Wan. I'm thinking of buying a Yoda too, but we'll see. I really love this character from the original Star Wars movie. And who's this? That's me! I went to a museum in New York City, a model museum where you can make a model of yourself by 3D printing. Oh, alright. We have the Green Lantern, beautiful pose. I'm waiting for another Green Lantern from Sideshow, which will arrive in March, I believe, with the lamp, with the lantern. We have the Green Arrow from the TV series. I hated the TV series and I didn't finish the first season, but I like this piece and the pose. Looks great. We have the big one from Sideshow. This is one of my favorite pieces in my collection. It's not the exclusive one with the Robin Hood hat and the stupid boxing glove arrow. This is the collector's edition. But I love this one. It's so detailed, so beautiful and so dynamic. Fantastic with the green water here. And I'm very interested in the character because of his experiences on the island, where he had to stay for a couple of years and live off the land with his bow and arrow. And he transformed from like just a rich kid who was just chasing girls to a responsible adult. A very interesting transformation and change. And this is his one-time girlfriend, Black Canary. I believe they're not together anymore in the comics, unfortunately. This is a fun piece. And we have her from Sideshow. Also a big piece of Black Canary. It's beautiful. I love this as a couple. So, we have the Terminator and his would-be girlfriend, Sarah Connor. So, from Terminator 2, which I enjoy. It's not a great movie. I like the original Terminator more, actually, but I like these little pieces. We have the Bodhisattva of Wisdom, Manjushri, and we have Nietzsche. Then we have some small erotic portraits which I received for free when I ordered something, and we have Aristotle, and we have Agent Carter. Hayley Atwell, I believe her name is. It's a really beautiful woman, and she didn't have a big role in the first Captain America movie. Unfortunately, she didn't really have a personality. I think they could have done much more with her. And we have Fear the Walking Dead, which is a very good TV series. I love these two characters, especially her. It's very sad that she died, spoiler alert. But a great TV series. As a spin-off, it's fantastic. And the real Walking Dead. A couple. I love her, Michonne, with a sword. She's a great character. I used to like Rick, the leader of the band, and the first character that was introduced in season 1, but then he made more and more bad decisions, and so I don't really like him anymore. We have Andrea, whom I liked a lot in the series. Pity she's dead. Most of the original characters are dead. This is not a great piece, but I wanted it because I liked her. We have Morgan, an interesting character who turns into kind of a Zen Buddhist from having been basically insane and killing just simply everyone. He becomes very tranquil and peaceful, very interesting character. We have oh, what was her name? And her boyfriend, Abraham, whom I liked. He was the only really manly man in the series, and of course he had to die. The only manly man in The Walking Dead. I loved him as a character. It was so great. And they had a love relationship fairly short. She didn't really have a personality, but I think she was too preoccupied by her own mental problems to really come out as a character, I believe. And we have Beth, also dead. Most of these characters are dead. Whom I liked in the series. She was a fairly straightforward and normal teenager thrown out into this extreme world, and a person whom I disliked originally, but now I think is a great character, whom was in love with her until she died. So they never really were a couple, of course, but they are allowed to stand next to each other because at least they were friends. Daryl Dixon. And Glenn, whom I liked a lot. He grew a lot as a character. He matured from a naive boy into a man. It was an interesting change, and his girlfriend and wife, I believe even, who is still alive as far as I know. I haven't seen the new season. I have it, but I haven't seen it yet. Who I think has been a fairly boring character throughout. It's unfortunate that she didn't have more of a personality. Alright. So, Game of Thrones. This, I think, is not a real Game of Thrones statue. It's more a copy of the Game of Thrones, the Mother of Dragons. But then we have the real pieces. We have Ygritte, who is dead, unfortunately. And the Mother of Dragons with the one-eyed dragons. A small piece, but beautiful. I love the blue dress. We have Ayla, who used to be my favorite character in Game of Thrones in the first few seasons, but then she grew up and became boring. I loved her, especially in the first season. She was really funny. Oh, and this is a beautiful woman. Fantastic. Very unsympathetic in the series, but a fairly realistic portrait, I think, of a rich, spoiled young woman. But it's a beautiful piece. And Daenerys, the Mother of Dragons. This is a very simple piece, but I like it a lot. It's beautiful here with the hips. Fantastic. I didn't like her in the series, though. I think she was very idealized. I don't think a woman in her situation would have acted so unselfishly as she did. And we have one of the main characters, of course, whom all the women love, the Bastard. I never liked him in the story. I didn't think he really had a personality. Also fairly idealized, boring, fairly unmanly, and he never looked happy, never once. The dwarf, which I loved, not originally, but he grew on me a lot. And I think it's the writer's, George R. R. Martin's favorite character, and you can see it if you read the books. I read only the first 2 books because it was so boring, but also in the TV series, he has more of a personality than the other guys. A really funny chap. And Jaime, who's a really interesting character who changed a lot through the seasons, in his beautiful Royal Guard armor. Really nice. Fantastic. Very interesting character. He changed a lot after he lost his hand, spoiler alert. His personality changed. We have the Hound, also a very interesting character. A very manly man, which is refreshing, even in a fantasy series. Very strong, stubborn, great character. And we have Hodor, also an interesting character. We finally learned why he only said one word in the series. It was an interesting reveal and a very nice and interesting idea that he is carrying Bran, I think it's called, on his back, because Bran isn't able to use his legs. Alright, we have just a few Christmas pieces. This is a mermaid for the Christmas tree, and a fun Santa Claus wearing sunglasses, and a great piece, the last one I will show you. Aspen Matthews was able to control water. You can see from her face she's in like a kind of trance state, and in this trance state she's able to control the water, almost like a water goddess, which is very interesting to me because in my own fantasy series that I'm writing, the water is the feminine element, fire is the masculine element. This is fantastic. It's not the exclusive, unfortunately, where her right hand, which is she's holding up, is also turning from water to skin, but still fantastic piece. So detailed and so realistic. Fantastic. And the water is absolutely amazing. Alright, these are my pieces so far. I'm waiting for more than a dozen more pieces, which will come in the next weeks and months. So I will certainly do a follow-up video in a few months, and stay tuned. Thank you.